G'day. This week it's all about a trip to Ballarat, and the three great things I really loved there and I went and checked out was tram ride from the old historical trams, trip to Eureka Stockade. That was really interesting. I learned a lot of things I didn't realise. And finally to Sovereign Hill. Well, that was an absolute treat. Now when you get to Ballarat, make certain you've got lots of clothes, all your thermals. I've got about 6 different layers on at the moment, and make certain if you've got some sort of decent heating inside the caravan. Anywho, let's go. Here's a brief history of the whole Eureka Stockade. In 1850, Port Phillip District was separated from New South Wales, and they decided then to call it Victoria. 1851, Latrobe, who was the governor, decided to introduce gold licences. Now, if you wanted to get involved in the gold rush, it cost you 30 shillings per month to have that privilege. Now, that was something that upset the gold miners, because 30 shillings was a lot of money. The other thing that Latrobe did, he said, all right, so the troopers, what the troopers can do, if they find someone without a licence or without a licence on them on the very day, they could be fined £5. Now, the trooper's wage at the time was 22 shillings. If he actually found the person guilty on the day, he could then charge them the £5 fine, and with that he had the privilege of keeping 50% of that earnings. So in one arrest for that particular crime, he could get his entire wages in one arrest. So that was not a good thing, and it obviously encouraged corruption. Second thing is the miners didn't have a voting right in the government. It was only the wealthy people, and and more importantly the homeowners. So they wanted to change that so that everyone had the right to vote. And the other thing is they wanted to put someone into Parliament so they had some representatives themselves. And here's the timeline for the Eureka incident. 11th of November, they formed the Ballarat Reform Group. And what they did was they submitted to Parliament basically the things that they wanted to change. And one of the most important things they wanted to change was to be represented in Parliament. On the 27th of November, Latrobe rejected that. On the 29th of November, they had a meeting at Bakery Hill, and the 10,000 people turned up to discuss that whole, the wrongdoings in the miners' view. On the 30th of November, the government did the biggest hunt they'd ever done for gold miners' licences. Now, keeping in mind, this little aside, is that each person that got caught would be without a licence physically on them would be charged £5, and 50% of that would go to the trooper or whoever had caught them. Then on the 3rd of December, that was the drama. The night before the 3rd of December, there was 1,500 people in the Eureka Stockade. The following night, which is when all the drama happened, there was only 120 people here. And with those 120, at 3 o'clock in the morning, Sunday morning, and the miners didn't anticipate being any problems at all, at 3 o'clock in the morning, 276 troopers and the army arrived and started shooting indiscriminately. 26 people were badly injured, and one of the guys that was badly injured was Peter Layla. Now, he was shot, but the sympathisers managed to hide him under a little wood pile. So when all the troopers grabbed all the people that they could and took them away, he had hidden away. He then, that very same day, his shots on his arm were so bad, his arm was amputated. Later on, the good news out of all of this, later on they did find, they did actually win their representation of Parliament. And in fact, Peter Layla was voted into Parliament. They did change the miner's licence and change that now to a miner's right, which we still have today. This little statue of a puppy dog called the pikeman's dog is quite relevant to the whole history of Eureka, because what happened was the little chappie, when his owner was shot and wounded, fatally wounded, he sat with the owner, and when the guys come to take the body away, he wouldn't let them take it away, but eventually they took it away, and as he took it away and put it on the cart, they put it on the cart, he followed all the way and jumped up on the cart and waited. So that's dedication for a little puppy dog. Just a little aside, the Eureka flag itself is absolutely massive. I've got a picture of it here, but because there's no other relevance to what it looks like, you've just got to take my word for it. It was very, very big. Allegedly, it was made by 3 women living on the in the mine precinct, and they just got some material and they just got together with what best they could and sewed it all together to make the original Eureka flag. If you have children in tow, this tree here is quite significant within the park. It's called the Blue Atlas Cedar, or Cedar Atlantica. Now, the reason it's important is because it was planted in 1891, so it's about 140 years plus, and it's important because they just put it in here just as a kind of memorial for the site. So if you've got your book, to find it as a reference, it's facing, if you're facing the dam, just on the right hand side, you will see the little shelter, little picnic shelter. It's just there, and it's actually got a little tiny sign on it. Go and find it. I'm at the Tramway Museum in state Victoria at Ballarat, and I'm just about to go in and check out the museum, the Tram Museum. That's supposed to be pretty good. Part of the purchasing the ticket to get in, you also get a free tram ride in an old-fashioned tram, so that should be fun.
The tram line used to continue on here, so beside the lake, for about another 3 kilometres. Now, we need to do a little job outside, changing the pole from one end of the tram to the other. Kids can come out and help if you like.
Yeah.
You got steps to your house, have you?
No, it's just
All over it.
Yeah.
Good girl, go to mum.
Come here, Bubba.
All over it.
Okay, so the tram runs on electricity, which is carried in the wire you can see up above the tram. The tram's got a pole on the roof and it's got a wheel on the end. So if I just move the pole a little bit.
Artie, just wait.
If you just watch, you'll see the wheel turn. Whoops. Pull the rock. Pull again. Okay, so that wheel runs along the wire. But it's always got to be at the back of the tram, not the front. So we need to turn it from one end of the tram to the other. So the kids can help if you like. You want to hang on to the rope?
Yeah.
Grab the rope. What we're going to do is we're going to pull it off the wire. I'm going to go for a walk this way. Okay, off we go. Now just be careful, swans are doing some dropping around here.
That's great. Yeah, look,
Okay, the lights. So they're quite big, obviously.
oh,
But this is 100 years old technology. So that's the tram motor. So on that end, there's a small gear that drives a big gear that's in that cover.
So this, in my opinion, is definitely one of the top 3 places to visit in Ballarat. And the bit of a history on the trams, it was started in 1887, and at those days they were horse-drawn. There was a bit of a drama with the horse-drawn because the horses were, well, they're animals and sometimes they get cranky, sometimes they'd bolt and they'd take off. Once or twice they would take off, and there was one accident where the horse ripped the whole tram off the rail tracks. It rolled over and a few people were hurt and a few people got cranky. Then in 1971, I think it was, they decided to call it a day. And what they did in Ballarat here, what they did was they pulled up all of the tracks right around Ballarat, but just in the section here with the lake, they decided to keep the wires overhead just in case that they were thinking of making a bit of a tourist thing. And in fact, that's exactly what they do, and that's what I've just experienced now. And last year, with the cost of over $2 million, they replaced the tracks because they were getting a bit too thin on the ground to take the trams on it. But definitely should check it out. Good morning, top of the morning to you. It's again a bit chilly. I think Ballarat are trying to keep shooting that temperature right down to 0 or below. Tomorrow night it's going to be 2 degrees, so maybe I really need to get a diesel heater in the van. Anywho, here's a random tip for you. This is a safety tip more than just a basic tip. So basically what it involves is just before you're about to head off for the day and it's been raining or it's been foggy overnight or whatever, just make certain that your windscreen's clear. Everyone does that, I'm sure. Check also your mirrors are clear, so wipe them down, and your front windows and your back windows, because if they're fogged up or if they're wet, or it just impairs your vision. And you'd be surprised how mistakes are easily made if it's a little bit foggy or a bit wet on one of the windows, or if you're looking in the mirror and you can't quite see, you think, oh, I should be all right to go into the lane. And so yeah, make certain all your windows are nice and clean before you start your journey. Good morning, top of the morning to you. Well, I'm in Ballarat at the moment, and even though it's only 400 plus metres above sea level, it's a little bit colder than a lot of other places. In the caravan, last few nights has been getting down as low as 3 degrees. Ooh, that's cold. And I don't have an oil heater. In fact, I don't have a heater at all. Actually, that's not true. I do have an electric heater, which I can plug into 240 volt. But it's like watching the fuel gauge on a big V8. as I plug in the heater, yeah, it warms up the place sort of reasonably well. It's only like a little heater, but because it's 1,000 watts or more, 2,000 watts could even be, the battery level just goes down like that. Sometimes I sacrifice that. Otherwise, I run the, I cook up a hot cup of tea and have those gas, my gas things alight. But if you're ever going to do that, it's always a good idea to put a timer on. So usually what I do is I turn the 2 of the gas things on in the caravan. Please don't do it. This is what I do. I do that for probably about 15 minutes. Get the timer on 15 minutes. When the timer goes off, turn them off, and it's taken the edge off the caravan. Don't do it when you're about to go to sleep. Don't even do it really early in the morning. If you wake up and think, I'll get out of bed in a minute, I'll just warm up. Don't do that. In fact, probably don't even run the gas things for a heater. Just telling you what I do. Anywho, I'm off to Sovereign Hill today, so looking forward to that. It's not raining, so that's a plus, and let's go. Well, here I am at Sovereign Hill. I've literally just walked through the door and got a couple of hints for you, a couple of clues to get your best effort out of here. As you can see, there's lots of stuff that's been reconstructed. It looks like it's the 1800s, so let's go and check it out. I'm up at the boiler room. Now, I don't know whether I've seen other boilers in the goldfields at Kalgoorlie and Coolgardie, and you actually see the whole boilers just sitting in a paddock. This is probably exactly how it's set up. Well, in fact, it is exactly how it's set up. But unfortunately, I'm unable to take you on a tour because this, amongst many of the other tours today, has been cancelled. Now, I'm assuming it's because maybe they just don't have the numbers, maybe it's getting too close to winter, you know. And I can't tell you much about them. If you look back at my old videos at Kalgoorlie and Coolgardie, I gave you a bit of knowledge about them. But as you can see, this is the boiler room, well set up. The whole Sovereign Hill is really well set up. I'm just going to see if I can latch onto a tour or get some actual real live footage of, I don't know, there's a trooper walking around being rather threatening, and apparently he shoots his gun at 11 o'clock. So I need to get organised. I'll set the alarm and be there in time for him to do the shooting. Again, another tour closed. If you recall back to when I was staying at Hoover House, and I was right next to the mine called Sons of Gwalia, they had these big wheels, and what they would do is they basically they would roll the steel wire to lower the guys in the trams into the mine and obviously pull them out. This is a pretty good setup here. However, you just have to take my word for it. Again, it's just really well set up. Just a bit of a shame about the tour. I'll try and give you as much information, and maybe we'll just make it a visual tour.
So you had to pay a gold licence fee just to step foot on the diggings. It cost you £1 for a 1-month licence, £2 for a 3-month licence. If you didn't have a licence on you and a trooper caught you, it cost you £5 on the spot. The worst thing was, if you weren't finding gold, you couldn't afford a licence. You certainly couldn't afford a £5 fine.
Right after the colony was founded, gold was discovered in Bathurst, New South Wales goldfields region. And so a gold rush began there. And from this newly founded colony, in his own words, the men are abandoning their places of employment, leaving behind their wives and children. Business has come to a standstill. So to remedy this, he thinks, well, if there's gold up there, surely there must be gold down here. So he puts out a bounty for any easily payable gold to be found within 200 miles of Melbourne. And then that open secret just became public knowledge. People knew and were telling they were discovering it everywhere to claim that bounty. Yeah, you don't want to fall down a mine shaft. Yeah, the candle will obviously get the eye of the trooper, but yeah, the blow your socks off with a bit of gunpowder in it. But they'd have their tent and then fly up a flag. If you're flying your flag, it's telling people you're open, you're doing business. And typically you create a sort of individual for yourself, so if you end up moving from place to place, people can recognise your flag if they can trust you, so to speak. But then when Ballarat started establishing itself, you still have these doctors going around. They're giving you the kind of a diagnosis, but a lot of them also don't have the treatments. And so they would send you to the apothecary. So they'd say, oh, you've got this, get this. So you go to the apothecaries and get yourself your treatment. But occasionally, if you can't afford to go to a doctor, you might just ask for some advice from the apothecary as well. And the apothecary does not have a doctor's qualification either. So best be careful. And now you can see some of the ingredients in the treatments are in the glass, you see here. But one that tends to be, catches the eye, is in there in this bit of a ceramic kind of container, blue, has leeches written on the front.
Leeches.
Oh yes. But it was very flammable, to the point where in some newspaper articles there were women who weren't watching where their dress was, in say like a hotel. They'd walk past the fireplace, the dress would catch fire, and the entire thing would be burnt in seconds. It is very flammable. Not only is it because it's thin, but also some of the chemicals used to keep it straight and proper would mean it'll just almost just you are up.
One, hold, arms. Squat, please, sit. Fingers in your ears. Moving forward to the left. Squat, arms. Number one. Number two. Number three.
The next part is the spokes radiating out from the centre. We'll make the spokes on where Andrew is. He'll be doing that for us. The assembly, putting it all together, and the wood rim, we're going to do over in the courtyard where we all were there a few minutes ago. That's our hub. And we start with our hub. To make that, we typically start with a solid log like this. So we start with a solid log of timber like that. So in Australia, the best timber is grey ironbark. There are logs and other timbers you can use.
Well, there it is, the end of a very big day. Now, your day doesn't need to be this big, but it was a long one for me. I got here at 10 o'clock, the opening, and it's now 5 o'clock, the closing. So that's a full 7-hour day, and I've got lots of goodies. And what I want to do is give you a really good taste of it without telling you everything. Otherwise, if I tell you everything, no point coming. There was some fantastic things. I've just left the gold smelter when they actually pour the gold, 3 kilograms of gold, pure gold, 24 carat. Well, there you have it, a week's knocking around Ballarat. I managed to stay in free accommodation for the whole week, which was brilliant. Loved that down by the lake. And I really love being in Ballarat, although it was a little bit chilly, but I am here in autumn, bordering on winter. And so if you're going to come here that time of the year, make certain you've got lots of woolies and thermals on. We've got about 8 different layers on at the moment, so I'm reasonably warm, but you know, probably not kilt weather. If you found the video useful, helpful and or entertaining, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't already subscribed, that would be great if you did pretty soon. And if you think the video is worth sharing, that too would be excellent. And until next time, this is Paul Wheel Drive, signing off.